I think the dialogues are very positive, and I think the outlook is bright for a spot Bitcoin ETF. And we do think it will be in January. Famous last words, don't want to say we know anything because we don't, but it's just the actions of the SEC that are leading us to that conclusion.
Famous last words. Always a little scary when someone says something like that. But I also think that we are going to see an ETF approval in January. I do want to give credit where credit is due. It was Eric Balchunas, the senior ETF analyst for Bloomberg, who first popularized the 90% line. And they've been sticking to their guns with this prediction. And they have not budged 1 inch. And not only that, it went from the X accounts now percolating into mainstream media. You can see now even Fox Business News. SEC could make crypto history in the new year with the first spot Bitcoin ETF approval. Just the fact that this seems like a bullish headline could make crypto history. I'm feeling a little bit more and more bullish now that we're seeing the traditional media outlets even now flipping bullish on Bitcoin ETF. I can't help but feel that these approvals are more and more likely, and ARK Invest in 21 shares is first, and this is the main reason we're seeing the January 10th deadline. Monday is January 8th, and it's going to be Wednesday, January 10th, and the reason you're going to see January 10th is potential approval for massive amounts of these Bitcoin ETFs. So they want to be fair to everybody. They can't have ARK Invest get a head start on BlackRock, Bitwise, and Van Eck. So the number that I've seen floating around 8.5 as the over-under. So expect 8 or 9 ETFs to be approved on this date, January 10th. But let's say we get approved January 10th. What does that mean for Bitcoin's price? What is that going to do? And when the heck do these things actually launch to market? Now, this is a good question. I looked at this for the gold ETFs. The first one took 6 months. How terrible would that be? BlackRock gets approved for a Bitcoin ETF and no one buys it for 5.5 months. That doesn't seem very bullish at all. Well, the first gold ETF took 6 months, but subsequently they reduced and reduced and reduced to eventually just happening days after an application. I think the one following was 4 months, then following that 2 months, and then within shortly after that, you were just seeing applications approved weeks after the fact here. So what are we going to expect for the Bitcoin ETF if we get approvals on January 10th? Well, James Seifert, he's also a Bloomberg analyst for ETFs, cryptos, asset management. I like how he's just putting the cards on the table. There is no way to know for certain. We're taking educated guesses here. Could be within a day or two of approval, or it could be weeks later. We're thinking these approvals are likely to happen, but they need to sign off on these 19B4s as well as the S1. So if approval for both happens, likely just a small gap between approval and launch. Obviously, no guarantee, but that said, I'm assuming they're working hard to get things finished. And then we have another answer right here. 6 to 10 weeks afterwards, we could see an approval. When asked about the 6 to 10 week number, James had a response. I don't understand why it would take that long. I saw the interview. That said, this is up in the air as far as I'm concerned. We're all just kind of guessing. He said he will definitely take the under on 10 weeks. So we're potentially looking at 2 months or less, maybe 1 month or less, potentially even days afterwards. If we get this flurry of ETF news, flurry of excitement, I expect Bitcoin to have a very hard rally. Maybe so hard we have to see a little bit of a pullback. So you got to be careful as far as a pullback happens in this mania of bullish momentum. But with the ETF approval and Bitcoin's having looming in the horizon at April 2024, just a mere few months away, where can Bitcoin go from there? Well, right here, it's a little hard to see. I circled, this is BlackRock's ETF application. We were talking about this on another video. You can see very bullish momentum over the short term. This is weekly candles we're looking at. So we saw a month bullish action, followed by about 2 months of bearish action before we've recently just had this really, really great few months for Bitcoin. I don't know if we're going to be looking something more like this with a short-term pullback, or are we going to be looking at something with maybe more of a serious style pullback akin to what we saw right here. But this is the potential halving line. So I'm going to roll it over right onto the first half of April. This is about where people expect the halving to happen. If we go back and look at previous halvings, it ignited a bull run like none other. We had a couple healthy retracements, and if we zoom in, which we will in a second, actually a little bit harder than you would think. The second halving, you can see another, delayed reaction, but followed by very, very bullish price action. Now, we go ahead and go to a logarithmic chart here. Some of these pullbacks were actually a little intense, folks. So while it didn't look like much on those charts right there, if we go right here, looking at a 20% drawback right there, Now we're going to look at 2017, a very bullish year for Bitcoin. Everyone kind of remembers 2017, Bitcoin, great year for Bitcoin. That was when it really hit the market, right? Well, during this period, we were having some pretty significant pullbacks. Here you can see a 33% pullback. And we go very close to where we at right now in the market. This is right before the halving, similar to where we're at in the market today. This pullback actually, folks, was a 40% pullback. So we saw some 40%, some 30% pullbacks. If we were to see a 30% pullback today, this is what Bitcoin's price is going to hit. If we catch this local top and pull it down 30%, you can see that is a reduction of 13,000. That would put us right at 30K, which is a pretty important level, which would not be that surprising to me. I would not be surprised to see, oh, all this bullish mania. Let's go ahead and wreck the long traders. Give us a 30% pullback, bounce right off 30K, and then BlackRock and their cronies, they're going to load up their bags. So what are you going to do if we see that pullback? So be careful for that. So I hope I got you feeling bullish, but we're going to go ahead and end with Cathie Woods. And what does she think the ETF news will do to Bitcoin's price? Will it be a buy the rumor, sell the news event? She has a great breakdown. Let's just go ahead and listen to her.
January 10th is the date specifically that a lot of folks are watching here. You know, prices have been rising in advance of anticipation for approval. Do you think they will continue to rise if indeed the spot Bitcoin ETFs are approved?
That is a great question. We've seen a lot of bullish action, and in anticipation, is there too much bullish action right now for Bitcoin to sustain this rally?
Well, in the very short term, because of the big move we've had, and it's an anticipatory move based on the expectation that a spot Bitcoin ETF will be approved, one or more, and it probably is more. So there has been a big anticipatory move. Those who have been moving in and enjoying some nice profits,
hopefully that's you watching. Hey, we've all been enjoying some nice profit lately.
Will probably, quote unquote, sell on the news. That's an expression that traders use. So you anticipate the event, bid up the price, and then sell on the news. Now, but
all right, so does that mean you should dump all your Bitcoin today?
that will be very short term, because what we think is going to happen here is that the SEC is going to be giving Bitcoin, a spot Bitcoin ETF, the green light for institutional investors to participate. I think a lot of institutions have been reticent before the SEC approves a spot Bitcoin ETF to do very much at all in the crypto asset world. And all we need is for the trillions of dollars in institutional assets out there to allocate maybe 0.1% or 0.2% to an ETF, which will be one of the easiest ways to gain exposure and one of the most efficient ways to gain exposure to Bitcoin. And that will move the price significantly. And
I agree with that assessment entirely. We're going to see a little bit of an allocation from some of these larger asset managers, but the number she threw out, less than 1%, is going to be significant impacts on Bitcoin's price. So let us know. Will it be a buy the rumor, sell the news? I tend to agree with Cathie Woods. In the short term, I do expect some pullbacks, but this is setting up 2024 and this next upcoming bull run massive for Bitcoin. So stay tuned and make sure you have on notifications, because we're going to be covering this January 10th. It's just a mere couple weeks away, folks. So we're going to be watching this very closely. Turn on notifications. I'm DZ for Discover Crypto, and I'll see you at the top.